Amriteshwariyai Namaha. Om Amriteshwariyai Namaha. Om Amriteshwariyai Namaha. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatva Manusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Namostu te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullaravinda Yatapatra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharatataila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gitamrita Duhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsya Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gitamritam Mahata Vasudeva Sudham Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Amriteshwariyai Namaha. We're continuing with chapter 11. Vishwarupa Darshanam. After the chapter on Vibhuti Yoga, or God's glory, we've entered this chapter. Seems the gloriousness of the cold may have affected our attendance a little bit today. It's also God's glory, how cold He can become in one day. It's an amazing wonder. But Vishwarupa Darshanam, or the vision of God's universal form, cosmic form, is the title of this chapter, which basically tells us exactly what we're going to be learning about. It is that universal form in which everything exists. For most of us, however, it'll be easier to think of it as Amma's universal form, in contrast to the physical form that we all adore so much. When we say Amma's coming to Chicago, we mean the body. Amma's body, physical body, is coming to Chicago. But if you go ask her, she'll probably say, I'm always there, you guys just don't pay attention to me. She might say something like that. So it's actually not such a difficult concept for us to understand. In this case, because Krishna is the guru, is the teacher, and Arjuna is the disciple, Arjuna knows Krishna. Krishna is the closest thing to divinity for Arjuna. So we're going to talk about it in the context of Krishna's omniscient and omnipresent and universal form. But we can understand it as Amma's form. This morning, we had the good fortune of receiving a phone call from Amma. And Amma was in Germany giving darshan on the first day of programs there. And the call came on Ron's cell phone. And I wasn't particularly interested. He was talking very loudly. I thought maybe he was talking with India. And then I heard, Amma! Immediately I just jumped up and went in the room. Normally I don't go in his room when he's having a conversation. And, it came on Ron's phone, and actually most of the time, I would say all the time, I'm not interested in Ron's phone at all. But this was a video call. Suddenly, Ron's cell phone became like the most important object on the whole planet for me for that time. And we all were focused, we were glued to his cell phone. And Amma was talking with us and asking about our health and what's going on. She said to me, if you feel sad, you can come on Europe tour. So I'm leaving right after this class. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I'm not finishing the class. No, no, of course, that was just a little bait to see, if I was going to go for the bait. And of course, I said, no. She said, if you feel sad, I was like, of course I don't feel sad. You called, so how can I feel sad? So after the call ended, however, I went back to Gita Loka, which is what I call that state where I'm, going through the chapter or the verses we're going to cover today. I just immerse myself in it for the whole day. And in that, Gita Loka, when I was going through these verses, these teachings were telling me something. And I thought to myself, Amma knows exactly how spiritually immature we all are. Of course, her true form is all-pervasive, just like our true form is all-pervasive. Difference is she knows it and we don't. But if we could just remember and truly believe in that all-pervasive form of hers, she wouldn't, have to go to the trouble of calling us and conveying her affection and love. But sadly, because somehow we don't feel it, otherwise she has to call us and show concern and ask about our health and our emotions, and her job would be so much easier if we could all just see her universal form. And I thought, wow, it's like we're almost burdening Amma by not seeing her universal form. But actually from chapter 7 onwards, Krishna has been preparing Arjuna and all of us for this very topic. And just like Amma tells us that unless we have love for the little ant that's crawling on the floor, we cannot say that we have love for her. We say, Amma, I love you, and then we insult somebody. She's like, no, you don't love me. Because obviously, if you really loved me, you couldn't insult that person. You couldn't hurt anything on this planet. So just like Amma says that, it's the same teaching basically, but in order for us to appreciate Amma's all-pervasive form, her universal form, we have to sort of dissolve the concept of her having a physical form. Does that make sense? I know we are so enthralled by, and she just had to choose a form that was so enchanting and so cute and so adorable, So that's the hard part, It's like we have to go beyond that and remember that she has her true form is all-pervasive. So we have to dissolve that concept that she's limited to the body. The real Amma, we can think of her as the ocean, and all the beings in this world are like the waves of the ocean, made out of the same divine essence, just like the waves are made out of the water that the ocean consists of. So the names that we give to everything in creation, our name, our spouses, our family members, all of them are like little waves that are made up of Amma's divine essence, and we give them names just for convenience. It's like you have 5 kids, it's like, hey you, not that you, the other you, it's like, it's just for convenience we need to have names. But really, in essence, we're all sparks of Amma's divine energy. So we're not really separate from God, from Amma, but we feel that way, and we regard each other in that way. That's the problem. In the last class, we got up to the point where Arjuna asked Krishna to show him his universal form. And we should remember, though, before we go into the actual content, that this universal form, when we talk about that, it is not a particular form, a special form, like this huge form. The one you see in the temple is small, it's not even 5 feet, but this is one is really big. It's not that kind of a thing. It is that form that is available to everyone all the time. It is the form of God as this universe. So it is not like you go to the temple and you have darshan of Rama or Shiva or Devi, And then you go when Amma comes, you have her darshan, and then Arjuna got darshan from Krishna as the universal form. Something I don't understand, but it's just like going to the temple. No, that's not the case. Because when you go to the temple, it's there. When you leave, it's not there. When Amma comes, we can have darshan. When she leaves, we can't have darshan. But the Vishwarupa darshan, or this universal form, is always there. It is everything we see. It's there from birth to death. There's nothing other than that in this world. So we're always actually having that darshan. We just don't know it. So in the India's mythological stories, some of them are actually based on truth, but they're so fantastic, they sound like mythology. We call them the Puranas. There are stories of sages meditating and through on a particular deity, and through their deep devotion, that deity, maybe Krishna or Shiva or Meenakshi or something like that, some deity appears before them and gives them what they call darshan, or reveals their form, blesses them, but it's only visible to that devotee, and also after some time they leave. The form disappears again. So this is a limited experience. So because people are used to stories like this from India's scriptures, they may feel that this universal form, that darshan is the same thing. It's happening at a particular time and place. But when you start to go into this description that we're going to hear today and also next time, you realize that it's impossible for that to be in a particular place. It'll say something like, Arjuna sees the entire universe shining like thousands of suns. So it's not like you could do that in one particular location. In fact, the word form itself doesn't even fit here, because form denotes some kind of spatial attributes with an outline of some kind. My form ends here, or you could say starts here. Your form is over there, and we have the form of this room is denoted by its boundaries. But if you talk about the universal form, there's no boundaries, there's no outline, there's no end. So it's not really a form at all. It is everything. So what is it? It's what we see all around us all the time. And if you remember, if you've read Amma's biography, if you haven't, start reading it tonight when you go home, please. But if you have read it, then you know that even as a little girl, Amma was seeing God in everything. She would, feel the breeze caressing her face, and she'd feel, oh, Krishna's, caress on my face, or the dark blue clouds that were going to rain. She would say, oh, it looks like Krishna. And it didn't just look like Krishna, it became Krishna for her. Everything was Krishna. And then later, everything was Devi. She saw divinity in everything. So this is the kind of attitude that we're looking for. So let us enter into the text. Verse 5. It's on page 269 of your books. Until verse 4, it was Arjuna speaking. Now it's changing to Krishna speaking. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Pashyame Partharupani Shatashotha Sahasrashaha Nana Vidhani Divyani Nana Varnat Kriti Nicha. There are some difficult to pronounce verses this today.
4 or 5.
Just read the English.
If you think I am capable of seeing it, O Lord of Yoga,
It's the one below that. Actually, it's on the next page, I think. Sorry.
Yeah, the blessed Lord said, behold, Arjuna now in hundreds and thousands, my multifarious celestial forms of various colors and shapes.
Okay. So Arjuna had asked to see a form, but looks like Krishna showed him hundreds of thousands of forms. That too, various colors, shapes. So this basically teaches us that there's no specific form for God. All forms are included in God's form, if you want to use that word form. So, interestingly, Arjuna is not yet actually seeing all these things. This is, Sanjaya, we don't want to go backtrack too much, but the one who's narrating this whole story is Sanjaya. He's telling it to King Dhritarashtra, and that comes up in a moment. And so he's saying that, Krishna said these things, but Arjuna is not actually seeing them. Even still, Jnanadev, we know how devotional he is in his commentary. He just can't help from giving a long, long description of all the shapes and sizes and colors and temperaments of the things in this universal form. It's like 2 pages long, so I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. There are so many quotes from Jnanadev today. But one thing he says, which is kind of humorous, so I thought to share with you. He says, in this universal form that Krishna revealed to Arjuna, he says some of them are such peerless beauty, some of them have such peerless beauty that even Cupid himself is brought to his knees. So in India they call it Kamadeva, so it's these beautiful damsels or whatever it is, so beautiful that Cupid falls at his feet and begs for mercy. So then he says, there indeed is no end to these forms and shapes of innumerably diverse kinds. And in the single limb of each one of these forms, you shall behold the entire universe. So if you can see the whole universe in one limb, what happens if you see the totality of the form? We can't even imagine what it must have looked like. We'll hear more in the next verse, and then once we hear a little bit more, we'll talk about it a little bit more. Pasyadityan Vasun Rudran Ashwinau Marutastadha Bahunyadrishta Purvani Pasyascharyaani Bharata.
Behold in me, Arjuna, the Adityas, the Vasus, the Rudras, the twin Ashvins, and the Maruts. Behold many wonders never seen before.
So the first part of this verse is referring to different types of what we call devatas in India. It's a devata means kind of like a minor god. You say Ishta Devata, which is your beloved deity, but here the devatas, or they're like gods in plural. So that means they're minor gods that preside over certain powers that function in this world. So that goes for, actually Aditya, some people think that's the sun. In this case, it means the sun, like the offspring of Aditi. So it's not the sun god, it is these class of beings called the Adityas. And then like that, Vasus and Rudras and the Ashwini Kumars and Maruts, so they're all deities that preside over certain functions. So I'll give you an example, which is a little more familiar to all of us. You have heard of prana, right? Prana, we know like pranayama, it's life force, it's some kind of energy, right? That's a general understanding that people have. But there's also this concept of pancha prana. You may have heard of that as well. Prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana. Actually, these are things that we worship during the pujas. When you see us do some of the mudras, the hand gestures, to ourselves and to the deity, we're actually worshiping those 5 pranas as well. And so if you look at those, prana is the presiding, visishta is the power that presides over prana. It's just a name for power. And prana, actually, even though we say, you think prana being breath, you would breathe it in. Prana is the power of the upward coming breath, or exhalation. Apana is the one that goes inwards. But also there is a sub-deity, which is Amma has talked about before. In that category of prana, the upward or the exhalation, there's a sub-prana, which is called naga. And that is in charge of, trying to remember, hiccuping, that's it. It's in charge of hiccuping because it's coming out, right? So let's say you were a person living in India 5,000, 7,000 years ago, and people thought in these terms, very thoroughly, and you started having the hiccups. Instead of saying, surprise me, scare me, instead of saying that, we would worship, Naga. We'd say, Naga, please stop this hiccup from happening over and over again. That was understood that was the god that presided over it. And like that, each one of these has, like, Vishwasrashta is the presiding deity of Apana, and there's a sub energy called Kurma, which governs opening your eyes. And then there's Vishwayoni is the presiding deity of Vyana, the energy governing circulation on all levels. And there's Krikara, which is a sub-energy there which governs hunger. They have little deities for each little power that goes on in our body, all these functions. Udana, the presiding deity, is called Aja, and that governs speech and expression and growth. And there's a sub-energy or sub-prana there called Devadatta. You know what that governs? Yawning. You remember Amma once she said, there's an energy that presides over yawning, opening your mouth, and a different one that governs closing it. So if you have let's say you have the blessings of the yawning part, but you don't have the blessings of the one that closes the mouth, for the rest of your life, your mouth might be open, like this. She does that during the retreat, she says like that. You can raise your hand, but you can't put it back down again. She's serious that there are these energies that we don't really think about. We think of everything as like, nerve impulses, and it's all science, it's all, medicine, it's all something that human beings have understood. But the ancient people thought of it as divine powers. And so they worship them in that way. And there's more reverence that comes in that way. And nobody has reverence for yawning, right? It's not like it's a divine thing. But if you think there's a power behind that that's divine, so I need the blessings of all these powers, then the whole world becomes divinized. So this is what the ancient cultures used to do. They would divinize the entire world by having gods and goddesses that preside over all these things. So nothing is worldly, everything is divine. So Krishna is telling Arjuna that he can see all of these subtle powers, and even many wonders never seen before. Wow, it's kind of enticing. So Jnanadev has something to say here. He says, behold now what the 3 Vedas could not hear of. So this, what you're going to see, is something that's not even mentioned in the 3 Vedas. It must be really special. And feast your eyes on these greatest of miracles. What miracles? We'll find out in verse 7. Ihaikastham jagat kritsnam pasyadyasa characharam mama dehe gudakesha yachanyad drashtum ichchasi.
O Gudakesha, see now in this body of mine the whole creation centered in, including the animate and the inanimate, and whatever else that you desire to see.
Okay, I find the grammar of this this verse a little hard to understand, so I just kind of rewrote it slightly. O Gudakesha, centered in this body of mind, now see the whole creation. In other words, see the whole creation centered in this body of mind, including the animate and inanimate, etc. So instead of reciting an endless list, Krishna just says, look, everything, you can see it inside of my body, okay? Don't go looking anywhere else. Everything is inside of me. So whether it's moving things or life, things with life, things without life, sentient, insentient, moving, non-moving, whatever it is, it's all inside of me. So, and you can see it right here, right now. You don't have to die and go to heaven to see it. So, and then when he says you can see whatever you want, Shankaracharya doesn't have a whole lot to say about this part of the Gita because it's more devotional, and devotion is kind of a matter of faith. So there's no real need for him to logically support these claims. In many ways, Shankaracharya's commentary is a response to people who were trying to discredit the tradition. So he's standing up and addressing all of those criticisms. Some of his commentary is about that. But when you're just talking about faith and devotion, there's really nothing to question. Either you believe it or you don't. So he's relatively silent in this part of the Gita. But here he says, you can even see if you will win the war or not. He's saying that Krishna told Arjuna, right? Because Arjuna was worried whether they're going to win or lose, and is he going to kill all those people, or are they going to kill him, or what? So Krishna is Shankaracharya is making it sound like Krishna is enticing Arjuna by saying, you're going to see, if you want to look inside me, you can see whether you're going to win the war or not. What that means, you know what they used to say about time? We have 3 dimensions, and time is the 4th dimension, right? So that's how Einstein himself came up with this concept of the space-time continuum. Some of you may have read about that or had some interest in it. Basically, the idea is that it's just one more dimension, time is. That's why we have this concept of Trikala Jnani, or the knower of the 3 periods of time, past, present, and future. For someone like Amma, it's just one more dimension. Just like we have 2 eyes, we can see length, width, and breadth, and height. Amma, it's just one more dimension, time, nothing else. So the past, present, future, it's all just like you can see all 3 dimensions. She sees one more, the future and the past. So he's saying, inside of me, you can see all these things. So Jnanadev says, at this, Arjuna did not say if he saw it or not. Lord Krishna wondered why Arjuna was silent. We'll find out why. We'll go one more verse. Natu mam shakyase drashtum anenaiva swachakshusha divyam dadami te chakshuhu pashyame yogamaishwaram.
But you surely cannot see me with these human eyes of yours. Therefore, I give you the divine eye, and with this you behold my supreme power of yoga.
So, as I've pointed out in earlier classes, Jnanadev always, in his commentary, he fills in the gaps. He kind of gives you a narration of what's going on behind the scenes, or what's not. He reads, he doesn't read between the lines, he writes between the lines. So, this is what he says. Then, Lord Krishna said to himself, his desire has not abated, nor has he found his way to blessedness. I revealed my omnipresent vision, but he doesn't see it. Then Lord Krishna smiled and said to Arjuna, I just now revealed the Vishwarupa, the universal form, but you're not beholding it. Then the thing about this is that it shows the personal interaction between Krishna and Arjuna. Arjuna's reaction to what Krishna says is even more funny. Arjuna replied, whose fault is that? You are indeed holding a cleansed mirror before a blind person. You're singing sweet melodies to the deaf. You're knowingly wasting the pollen of flowers before a toad. Why then be upset at others? You have opened up before the physical eyes that which is beyond the reach of the senses and perceptible only to the eyes of the inner intuition of knowledge. How should I then behold it? He's getting all upset. We might think, how can you talk like that to Krishna? Right? But when you have that intimacy and that familiarity, you never know what you're going to say. There's a really nice story about one of the Swamis. He shared with me from his experience with Amma in the very early days before any of us knew Amma, before hardly anybody in the world knew Amma. In those days there were just maybe 10 of them at most, and they would spend all their time with Amma, and it's like from morning until night. In fact, they all slept in the same hut. There was only one hut, and Amma had, her space, and everybody had other space, but they all shared the same. There was take turns taking showers. There's only one shower, only one bathroom, and all the brahmacharis and swamis shared one towel. And then you would wash it and wring it out. Anyhow, it's so hot there, it doesn't matter. You're going to dry off in 5 minutes. And then on the days when they had to go for outside the ashram, they had one nice clean dhoti that they would share. And it's like, no, today I'm using the dhoti, the clean one. No, I need it. No. So they had to take turns. Like that, they were living so closely with each other that, when Amma would say something, you never know. You might say, it's like your housemate. You might say, no, I don't think, is that really true? Or you might question. So something happened, and of course Amma knows how to push people's buttons and make their ego come out, and make their vasanas, their negativities come to the surface, so she can scoop them off, right? We interact, or we become aware of our negativities, but we're helpless. We don't know what to do when they come up. Anger, jealousy, fear, and all these things. We're stuck. If it's in Amma's presence, she can scoop it up and remove it. So she would bring it up. And sometimes that was too much for people to handle. Even today, sometimes it's too much for us to handle. But it was in such close quarters that you couldn't escape. You can't get away from Amma, So, not that you would want to, but if you're feeling your ego's hurt, So one of the Swamis got upset, and he packed his bags, and he said, I'm leaving. And actually, if you talk with the senior Swamis, they say that pretty much all of them did that a few times. Because they came right after college. They were 21, which means they had no experience on their own, Amma had to teach them how to wash their clothes and everything. So they all, this one guy, one Swami, he packed up and left. And I think it was the farthest he ever got. They all left a few times. But the farthest any of them got was the other side of the backwaters. They couldn't even walk into Valikau. They couldn't even walk into the town there because they just felt, as soon as they left the ashram, they felt so empty inside. Because Amma's back there, and where am I going to go? Where am I going to go? And Amma's right where I just left. So, he was gone. He was on the other side of the, backwaters for a long time. Finally, he just went back to the ashram because there's nothing else to do. But he was hiding in one of the rooms somewhere. There weren't that many rooms. I think he found a shed somewhere, and he was hiding inside there, just peeping through like a hole to see if Amma's anywhere there. And then Amma, was walking through the ashram, and she just suddenly turned and came right at the hut that he was in. And then he was inside, shivering. He was afraid that she's going to see him inside there because he wanted her to think he was gone. But he had his little bag, he came back, right? So then he started crying, because he was feeling so emotional. And then the door opened. And in front of him was Amma. And she was crying too, because she was feeling his pain. So he said that, he couldn't, how can he be angry at a mother who's crying? Because he's crying. So, such a precious experience. So, it's happened in Amma's presence also. We all may argue with Amma about things too. So, he did that. And what happens? Of course, being the Supreme Master, he has no ego. So Krishna apologizes to Arjuna. He says, "Oh, as I was wrapped in love's ecstatic delight, I forgot to bestow on you the power of beholding the universal form." So he says, now I'm going to give you that power. But before we hear about that part, I want us to consider, when he says the divine eye, I'm going to give you a divine eye, what is that? And is it really some eye? Or is it just that removal of the hindrance, right? Because there's something that's keeping us, even right now, from seeing God's universal form in every inch of this universe, right? Why aren't we seeing it? There's something preventing us from seeing that. So, what we learn also through the Gita is that really it is our negativities, our likes and dislikes that are creating that impediment from being able to see God's form everywhere. Even though it's available all the time, we're not available. We're not looking at this world as God's form because we have divided it so meticulously into good, bad, neutral for the time being until I know what this guy's like, or like kind of good, really good, kind of bad, really bad, desirable, somewhat desirable, not so desirable, run away from it, that kind of. We have labeled the whole world like that. And so at the same time, we say everything is God. Everything is God. But wait, I don't want to go over there, and I don't like that guy, and I like this person because they say nice things to me. I like this food, I dislike that food. We have so many labels for the world, so where's there any space for God? In fact, we don't even see God in ourselves. And that goes for everybody. Nobody sees God in themselves, really. They don't think that they're God. They just think, I'm far away from God, I'm trying to become God. And so we have to go to a specific place to feel God, unfortunately. And then what happens is that if nobody thinks that God is within them, or believes that, truly believes that, then there's no place for God to exist. Where does God exist in this world? We have basically negated all the possible locations for God. We don't even treat our possessions and nature like God. We abuse ourselves, we abuse other people, we abuse nature. So everything, instead of seeing Vishwarupa, we're seeing Bheda Rupa. We're seeing a world of division instead of a world of divinity. All due to these labels that our mind puts on things. So once we divide the world like that, all the divinity is lost. So in light of this, we can say that the divine I that Krishna is referring to is a mind free from all of those likes and dislikes. Just like we want Amma to like us. We go for darshan, and Amma says, you, get out of the darshan line, I don't like you. What are we going to feel like? We want her to say, you cut the line, come in front. I want you to right in the front because you're my favorite child. We're okay with that, but we're not okay with I don't like you. So, because Amma doesn't have any of that, that's why everybody loves her so much. So, it is not specifically self-knowledge that he's referring to, this divine eye. Because sometimes Divya Chakshuhu refers to self-knowledge in the scriptures, but not here. Because Arjuna is still confused. We know in the beginning of the Gita he's totally confused. He can't possibly have self-realization. So it's a temporary removal of that impediment in the mind, that judging quality, that labeling quality, things that we like and dislike. So once that's gone, at least temporarily, from the mind, then we can see divinity everywhere. So just imagine that the same thing could happen to you. Amma says, I'm going to remove all the likes and dislikes from your mind. And then what does the world look like to you? It's probably exactly what we're going to see, we're going to hear about. Because, if you think about it this way, scientists have all kinds of equipment that enable them to look at the world in a more profound way. They can see vaster worlds, they can see more detail, they can see the whole universe, they can see things far away, but that doesn't mean that they see it as divine. We may look at a microscope, look at some cell. We can see something that's extra vision, but it's not divine vision, right? It's just augmented vision, physically. So physical perception does not automatically grant divine perception. Seeing things as divine requires a mind that is free from those likes and dislikes. So we should understand it that way, seeing the whole instead of seeing the parts. That's exactly the topic that is being referred to in the Purusha Suktam. How many people have heard of Purusha Suktam? Many people have heard of it. I think we should learn that here. We should practice that and learn how to chant that, because the meaning is so profound. It basically talks about this whole universe as the body of the cosmic Purusha, or the cosmic person. So I have some excerpts from it. I'll read to you because it helps you understand. This is from the Rig Veda, mind you, the oldest section of all the Vedic teachings. So it goes, all this is verily the Purusha. Purusha means the divine human being, or the cosmic man. All that existed in the past or will come into being in the future is also the Purusha. So much is his greatness. However, the Purusha is greater than this. The cosmic being is greater than this. All the beings in this world, in other words, form only a quarter part of him. The 3/4 part of his, which is eternal, is established in the spiritual domain. In other words, it never becomes manifest here. The Purusha, with the 3/4 of his energy, ascended above. His 1/4 of material energy becomes this creation again and again. So it's not an exact fraction, don't get confused. It just means 1 part of the Supreme Being is all that we see manifested in this world. So even when Krishna is showing Arjuna this universal form of whatever is there in the universe, that's still a tiny portion of the whole being itself. Then he pervades the universe, comprising a variety of sentient and insentient beings. So this is exactly what Amma means when she says, the creator and the creation are not two, they are one. You've heard her say that, no? She says that so much. That's why she says, the true devotee is one whose legs run to help those who are in need, whose hands caress and hug the suffering person, whose eyes shed tears for the suffering people, and whose ears listen to the sorrows of the sad people. So, in her view, that is the measure of our spirituality. How much are we seeing God in this whole creation? And this Purusha Suktam goes on to praise the sun, the moon, the stars, the people, and all of these animals and trees and rivers as part of the universal being. Just different aspects of it. So just imagine if we were all to live that teaching. Or a society, like Amma talks about in the ancient times, when everybody lived with that understanding. All the beings are just parts of the universal being. Just imagine how dramatically our view of this world would change. So, certainly there'd be no more wars, there'd be no more hatred, no more competition. That would be the real God vision that Krishna is talking about. So just imagine you go into space, you're an astronaut, and you look at the Earth from space. You see the totality as one unit, just the whole globe. But you don't necessarily see it as something divine. It's just the planet. But if you see it as God's form, it invokes a totally different feeling within you. You can never wage war on that planet. You can never destroy that planet when you see it as something divine. So seeing and feeling the divinity are totally different. Another thing is, most of the things when we look at things in the world, our first impression is that of what is my relation to that thing. Whether I think it's good or bad or divine or not divine, first thing I check is what is its relationship to me. If it's something that is important to me, I care about it. If it's something that has nothing to do with me, yeah, it's neutral, I have no opinion about it. But as soon as that thing becomes part of your life, you will immediately have an opinion about it. So this shows how actually our perceptions of everything are completely self-centered. You know, our opinions are all formed based on how they affect us. So here's an example. Let's say you're watching two children play, and they seem to be having a wonderful time, and they're playing very well. They're playing some game and scoring points, and you're looking at watching, you know, wow, these guys are so good at it, and they're scoring points so skillfully, and you're enjoying just watching the game. You don't care who scores how many points. Then suddenly your child starts participating in the game, or your family member, your relative starts participating in the game. Suddenly, who wins and who loses really matters to you. You're like, because if your child is not competing very well against the others, you feel sad, and you hope that the other guys lose now because my child or my friend or my relative is now competing in the game. So even though we were just enjoying it a few minutes ago, as soon as we have a vested interest in that thing, we can't enjoy it anymore. So that's the problem. The way we look at the world now is always my vested interest. How is it going to be good for me or bad for me? And then we label it that way. And in that case, there's nothing divine about it anymore. So that's how we lose our appreciation of this world's divine beauty. So we can think of it like this. Either you say, I have no children, I have nothing in this world, or you say, all children are mine, or everything in this world is mine. One or the other. Amma's attitude is pretty much everything. Everything is hers. That's how all the people are her children. She comes, you know, she'll say, I'm going everywhere. I'll go to China, I'll go to Africa, and I'm going to hug all the people. They're all my children. Let's say she comes here one year and she says, no, the Chicago people are not my children. I'm going straight to Boston. You know, we would feel so bad, right? So she, for her, everybody, every place, everything is hers. You remember that story about how after giving darshan till late night in Calcutta, she came out of the hall and started picking up garbage in downtown Calcutta. What does she care about downtown Calcutta? You know, who knows when she's going to go there again? And the people, it's just going to be dirty again the next day maybe. Maybe all the people, nobody cares, they're just going to throw their garbage again. Doesn't bother her. This whole world is hers. So if something has to be done, she doesn't care where it is. She does it. So try to see the whole. This is what the Divya Chakshuhu is, the divine eye. That's why I'm spending so much time on it, because it's because of that divine eye that Arjuna is able to see it. So we should be understanding what it stands for. See the whole instead of the parts. And try not to label and judge the world based on your own personal preference. I remember there was a story that took place here a few years ago. You might remember that there was one year where a lot of cars were getting stuck in the parking lot, just over there, right? Where we have the plot ready for houses. That used to be a parking lot where we used to have the campfires sometimes. Well, it became a big swamp in the middle, and one car got stuck. So It dried out, I think, the next day because it didn't rain. But then on Devi Baba, there was supposed to be rain again. And Sripad, our own Sripad, was concerned that, maybe more cars will get stuck. So he was praying that there would be no rain. So he came to Amma, he said, Amma, I remember I was there by Amma. He said, Amma, please pray that there will be no rain tomorrow for Devi Baba. And Amma said, I cannot pray that there will be no rain. Because there are people in the world who need rain. Some people want rain, some people don't want rain. I can never ever pray that there's no rain. She just said, whatever God wants, that's good enough. And then Sripad was like, oh, okay. I don't know what's going on. But I don't think it rained the next day, actually. Maybe Amma's grace came in another form. She didn't have to pray for it. Sripad's dilemma made her feel compassionate, and she said, it'll rain maybe the next day. So if we have that kind of attitude, the proper attitude, then instead of living in the world of our own creation, we live in the world of God's creation, the way it really should be. So this divine I is Krishna temporarily removing those things from likes and dislikes from Arjuna's mind. So Arjuna forgot his individuality and he could finally see that universal form. It's always there before him and before us too, but it's veiled by our self-centered mind. So we're also cultivating that same divine I. We should have that confidence because Amma's teachings, what she's demonstrating for us, is that process of developing that divine I to see Amma's presence everywhere. So don't feel that you're not getting that education. Verse 9. Sanjaya uvacha evam uktva tato rajan mahayogeshwaro harihi darshayamasa parthaya paramam rupamaishwaram.
Sanjaya said, O king, having thus spoken, Hari, the supreme master of yoga, revealed to Arjuna his supremely glorious Ishvara form.
Okay. So now this is Sanjaya talking. So it's like you're reading a story within a story within a story, really. There's so many layers to these, especially Mahabharata and Ramayana. There's always stories embedded in so many layers. So we're back to the point where we're not on the battlefield anymore. We're back within Dhritarashtra's palace, and the blind man is hearing the story, the blind king is hearing the story as narrated by Sanjaya. So, what did Arjuna see? He's going to see all the beauties of creation that he missed until now due to the coloring of his own mind. Soon as the I and mind disappeared, the divine appeared before him. His mind became perfectly relaxed and everything became wondrous, beautiful, and divine, which is what Sanjaya is going to explain in the next verse. But before we get to that, we have to hear what Jnanadev says. He quotes Sanjaya as having said these following words. So he adds to it. No sooner did these words, meaning, I give you the divine I, and with this you behold my supreme power of yoga. No sooner did those words come from the Lord's mouth than all of the sudden the darkness of ignorance vanished. So I'm going to invite you to just imagine that this is Amma doing it to you. So Amma says, I give you the divine I to see my universal form. So this is what Jnanadev says happens next. The Lord's words were the rays of spiritual light kindled by Lord Krishna to illumine the majestic empire of the omnipresent Supreme Being. Then there flashed forth the light of that spiritual eye, and the inward vision of knowledge burst up into a flame. And thus did Lord Krishna present to Arjuna the majestic grandeur of his all-pervading spirit. Narayana opened out to Arjuna that eternal ground on which is painted the whole creation. There dawned on Arjuna's eyes the divine splendor of Lord Krishna. So on your face, the divine splendor of Amma is dawning. He was immersed in one whole ocean of miracles all around, and his mind was plunged into the flood of amazement. Arjuna's mind lost its bearings. His intellect itself began to lose ground. The outgoing rays of the five senses turned back inwardly to fill up the mind. Still meditation itself became still. Quiescence of mind became quiescent. It's a nice analogy. The stillness of mind became still. It's that amazing of an experience, he says. Let's find out what's next. We'll read verse 10 and 11 together. Aneka vaktra nayanam anekadbhuta anekadbhuta darshanam aneka divyabharanam divyaneko dyathayudham. It's a little hard to break up this verse in between, but we forced it to. Next verse. Divya malyambara dharam divya gandhanulepanam sarvascharya mayam devam anantam vishwato mukham. So we'll have one verse to one person, another verse to someone else. Just read the English beneath the Sanskrit.
With numberless mouths and eyes, with innumerable wonderful sights, with numerous celestial ornaments, with numerous heavenly weapons uplifted.
Weaving divine garlands and apparel, anointed with celestial perfumed oil, the all-wonderful, resplendent, infinite, and having faces on all sides.
Okay, so thank you. This is actually a continuation of the previous verse. Krishna's supremely glorious Ishvara form, ... with numberless mouths and eyes, etc. And I think there's one extra word in here that we don't need. I'm guessing it should be wearing divine garlands and apparel, anointed with celestial perfumed oil, all wonderful, resplendent, like a comma is missing also. Resplendent, infinite, and having faces on all sides. Then it makes more sense. So this is what Arjuna is now finally able to see, because he has the Divya Chakshu, or the divine eye. When I was teaching this class somewhere else, a man came up to me afterwards and he said, this experience that Arjuna had, I had a very similar experience once. I said, really? He says, yeah, I was on psychedelic drugs at the time, but actually I had a similar experience. At first I was like thinking he really had this experience, but the difference is that even without taking any drugs, Arjuna is seeing this. It sounds pretty, fantastic, and it's just going to get even more and more fantastic as the chapter wears on. So, countless mouths and eyes basically means when you look at the whole creation as a whole, all the mouths and all the eyes belong to the totality, right? Our eyes are part of the totality. So this universal form just means the sum total of all the forms. So your eyes, my eyes, all of our eyes are part of that universal form. So that's why it's countless mouths and eyes. All the people are part of the whole, and that's the beauty of it. You're seeing the whole creation as a totality. So the difference is that before, Arjuna, if you remember from the first chapter, second chapter, he was talking about my family, my relatives, my people, and then he's looking on the other side. Oh, those are the Kauravas, my enemies. Oh, there's this person, that person, good people, bad people. Now all that is gone. It's all just mouths, faces, and eyes of that one divine being. So it reminds me of that song that Amma sings. Every bird that sings, all living things are what? Nothing else but you. It's exactly the same teaching. So that's one of the beautiful things about that song, is that in a lyrical form, it's conveying the same teaching. You know, we may feel that way when we sing the song. The problem is that we feel like that all the time. Bird singing is one thing, but that guy, the way he talks, I don't like it, you know. Doesn't sound like a bird singing, you know, that guy's annoying, you know. So it's just like having a crow in your room instead of like a songbird, you know. You'd rather have a songbird, but if it's every bird that sings, then it's got to be the crow also, right? Unfortunately, we have to accept that. So it means accepting the whole creation as God too. And when it says all wonderful, that means that all of the wonders in the world belong to that divine form. We want to claim the good things, like, look, see how great I am, I can do this, I can do that. We claim the wonders as our own, but no, all the wonders also belong to God. And it has been said that there's a verse in another scripture that says, the stars and all the planets form the flower garland of God. So just imagine, it's a being that is so vast that all the planets in the galaxies are just like a flower garland. So here are some ideas of how we can see the world in this way. Let's say you look at a mountain and there's water streaming down the mountain. You can think of the water as like a pearly necklace on the mountain. The stream flowing down the mountain is like a necklace, or it's some kind of a ornament for that mountain. And the trees on the mountain are like its dress, its clothing. In fact, there's you may have learned that verse. I would recommend everybody learn it. It's something you say the first thing in the morning. You know, you look at your hands and you say Karagre Vasate Lakshmi. The second verse that you chant is Samudra Vasane Devi. Have we done that here? Samudra Vasane. I chant it like the Gita. Samudra Vasane Devi Parvatastan Parvatastana and Parvatastana. No. Oh my gosh, I do it every morning. Suddenly when I'm stage fright, I can't remember it. Mandale, yeah, Parvatastana Mandale, yeah, Parvatastana Mandale, Vishnu Patni Namastubhyam, Padasparsha Kshamaswami. I can write it on the board, but I can't remember it because I don't do it out loud. Samudra Vasane Devi, Parvatastana Mandale, Vishnu Patni Namastubhyam, Padasparsha Kshamaswami. So, I'm going to write it using that usual, the scholarly way of writing it. Samudra Vasane Devi. Samudra Vasane Devi. Now, those of you who are going for the Arjuna pronunciation class on Saturday mornings, and those of you who are studying Sanskrit, why am I pronouncing this Vasane and Devi, like an elongated E, even though there's no line on top of that? someone other than Dr. Poti. Tell me why there's no line on top of that, even though it's elongated. Anybody know why? Samudra Vasane Devi. It's because there's only one E in Sanskrit, and it's always elongated. So that's why we don't draw a line on it. So there's no ne in Sanskrit. There's no vasane. It's always vasane. So like in Malayalam, there's a short E and a long E, but not in Sanskrit. Parvatastana mandale. Parva. This is elongated. Parvatastana. Tana. Ta no ado ta. Verum ta. Parvatastana. Mandale. Mandale, I believe, is going to be like this. Like this. Da. Mandale. Ingane. Huh? Sadharana da? Oh. Mandale. Okay, sadharana da. Le. Mandale. Parvatastana mandale. Again, not elongated. Vishnu. This is the S with a dot underneath it and the N with a dot underneath it. Vishnu Patni Namastubhyam. Tubhyam Padasparsha Kshamaswame. You might not be able to see this far down. I hope you can. Pada Sparsha Kshamaswame. Can you see this? Is the chair in the way?
No, we can see it.
You can? Okay, great. So, Samudra Vasane Devi, this means that the ocean is your dress, O Devi. The ocean is your clothing. Parvatastana Mandale, the mountains are your bosom, your chest. Vishnu Patni Namastu, I bow down to you, O holy consort of Lord Vishnu. And this is the most important part, Pada Sparsha Kshamaswame. So before you get out of bed and put your foot on the ground, you say, please forgive me for touching you with my foot. So you get out of the right side of your bed and say this prayer, and only then step on the ground. Sorry? This is considered to be auspicious. Well, what I do, my bed is like that too. What I do is I roll over the right side, and then I just pretend that I'm getting up. At least I went that way first. Yeah. You know, it's the sankalpa that matters, you know. Or what you can do is you can sit up and then turn right, you know. Okay? So this is a beautiful concept. It shows us, it reminds us that this whole world is the body of Devi. We'll have time for questions afterwards. Something missing? Kshama? Yeah, Kshamaswame. Kshamaswa. Yeah, forgive me for, what did I say? Pardon me. Forgive me for stepping on you for touching you with my feet. Something to that effect. So the
Right hand is always the hand that you give the prasada and you accept it.
yeah.
So your right is always very auspicious in Hinduism.
Right. I know for the lefties it seems, it comes up in Paramatmananda Swami's book also. He used to be left-handed, or he still is, I think. And he had this resistance to this concept of something special about the right hand. And at first, before he met Amma, he had another guru. And that guru passed, but he was telling him that it's not about which hand is good or bad, it's about the flow of energy in the body. And the ancient sages, believe that the energy flows into the right hand and out for the left hand. So he's saying that, you know, if you wanted, you know, if you think that the rishis were fools, then you can do whatever you want. And so he left him with that and then let him just think about it on his own. So anyhow, the point is that the whole earth is the body of the Divine Mother. And or, you know, we can say Krishna or whatever it is, but in the case of this prayer, that's what it stands for. So just imagine now you have that attitude that this whole universe, this whole world is the body of God. And now you're in a spaceship and you're looking at the earth. You're going to say, she's wearing a blue sari. She's wearing a blue sari and she's got a, you know, that's the ocean. And then there's all the forests, so she's got like a green blouse on, right? So the Devi, this earth, Bhu Devi, the Earth Mother, is wearing a blue sari with a green blouse. We say that like, Amma, Devi Baba, what is she wearing? Now you can say Mother Earth is pretty much wearing the same color all the time. She doesn't get bored of it. So this is the way to look at the creation as God's form. So one thing that some people get confused about is why does the form have to have numerous heavenly weapons unlifted? What does that mean? So we should understand that it's not like weapons that we're thinking of as to fight people and, you know, to do battle and hurt people. These are powers, basically, powers that are part of creation. Just think a quasar. I mean, what better way to explain it as like a weapon? It's just like a huge explosion, you know? So it's like a bomb in a way. But to the common people of the thousands of years ago, you know, you can't say it's a quasar. There's no word for it like that, you know? Or it's like vajra, this lightning bolt. That word vajra is actually named for a weapon also in ancient Sanskrit. It was considered to be a weapon, the lightning bolt. So these natural powers are actually kind of symbolized in the form of weapons. It's not actually necessarily that a weapon that God is going to hurt somebody with. So don't have to, you know, look at it that way. And so there's flower garlands coming up in here, right? Isn't there some mention of flower garlands? Divine garlands in apparel. Yeah, so think about it this way. It's not like a fixed location garland, right? It's all the flowers in the world. So like if Amma wears a flower garland for Devi Baba in Chicago, and they say, okay, who wants this? You know, there'll be a huge line of people who want to get that flower garland that Amma wore that night. And they might even fight over it, you know. But if you go into any garden that has lots of flowers in it, that itself is a flower garland adorning Amma's universal form. Same Amma, but not the limited body form. Now it's the universal form. The Chicago ashram, we have plenty of flowers all over the place. So you can view those flowers, the wild, these days they're kind of over this time of year, but in summer and everything, Amma's wearing a yarrow garland, or Amma's wearing an echinacea garland. All these flowers that we have here on this property. And then you have the irises in front of the South Lodge. So Amma has a iris garland there on her universal form. And then pretty soon the trees are going to change color here, right? So we can say Amma is changing her sari from green to orange. Instead of saying the chlorophyll is now dying and so now it's brown, you know. We can look at it scientifically, or we can just think Amma's changing her dress color. And what does the celestial perfume refer to? Just think, if it's the universal form, it's all those fragrant things in this creation. Just think how many fragrant flowers there are. How many people have smelled champaka flower? It is divine. The only way you can explain it is divine. It's simply divine. It's just unbelievable. No wonder Devi likes champaka flower. And then there's like that dozens of fragrant flowers that are so beautiful, like plumeria and, you know, daphnes, jasmines, so many beautiful flowers. And then you have all the grasses and herbs, lemon balm, lemongrass. Lemongrass is used in perfume, right? Or mimicked at least in perfume. And then you have resins and woods like frankincense, which is dashangam in Sanskrit, and we use it in the pujas. You know, you might have seen at the end of the homa, it's been a while, we haven't done one, so you might not remember. At the very end, we put something in the fire and it suddenly burns up and creates an extra flame. That's dashangam, that's frankincense. It's just pieces of wood, but it has a tremendous fragrance. And then there's myrrh, there's amber, sandalwood, all these things. These are the celestial perfumed oils that he's talking about. They're all bedecking the universal form of God. They're part of that form. So this whole universe is full of wonders, but the problem is most of us are too busy or too engaged in other things to even see these beautiful flower garlands adorning the universal form. You know, we turn on the computer and look at the news and we're like, Turkey's invading Syria. Let me drink my coffee, you know, and then we go to work, and then it's like there's no divine world, it's all horrible things, right? And the mass media will be sure that you see all those things, but they don't say, oh, this is, you know, beautiful flowers in the Amazon jungle bedecking our beloved Mother Earth. You don't see those kind of things. So that universal form is available if we're available. That's the problem, we're not usually available. In this verse, he talks about infinite, so we have to be careful. In verse 11, it says infinite. Don't forget, he's talking about the visible universe, right? Visible means, you know, with the divine eye, but still this prapancham, the creation. So that is not infinite, actually. It's, in the relative sense, it's infinite. We talked about this before, I think in chapter 8 or so. It looks infinite. As far as from our standpoint, it's about as infinite as it's going to get, but it still is a creation. It has a beginning, it has an end. And he says that at one point the universe was created, and again this whole universe will be dissolved. So it's really not infinite. But for the sake of this context, he's calling it infinite. And it says, having faces on all sides. So one interpretation of that is that all faces are God's face. So like our face is God's face. Other people, when you're looking at somebody and you're feeling distaste for them or dislike for them, you have to remember, all faces are God's faces. That can hopefully help us regain a good attitude towards the person. And all faces are God's face is the concept behind what Radha used to express. You may have heard Amma talking about Radha as the greatest of all Krishna's devotees, you remember? She had so much devotion. Compared with all the other gopis, her devotion was much more mature. And she once said to her, companion gopis, she sees nothing but Sri Krishna's face wherever she turns her eyes. That was the kind of devotion that she had. She could see Krishna everywhere. So what the gopis aspired for, she had from the beginning. Shankaracharya, though being more intellectual, his interpretation of it is different but equally profound. He says, having faces on all sides means he's facing God is facing all beings as their self. So in other words, that faces in all directions means facing you, so you're seeing that divinity as your own self, or striving to see that at least. So in conclusion of this verse, Jnanadev sums up how Arjuna was feeling at this time. So I'm going to share that with you because it really gives us some insight into Arjuna's state of mind at the time. He says, Arjuna, with his astonished gaze fixed on the entrancing vision of surpassing grandeur, was at his wit's end to make out if the Supreme Being was standing up, sitting, or lying down. He couldn't tell. In other words, he couldn't make head nor tail of the Supreme Being. All around, the image of the Supreme Presence met the eye as Arjuna stood in silent wonder, face to face with the Supreme Person's presence over again. In front, the Supreme Person confronted him with countless faces. And as he turned back in dismay, there too Arjuna beheld the same sight of omnipresence, with innumerable faces, hands, and feet. Thus then did Arjuna struggle through a flood of wonders to get a foothold on solid ground, and suddenly he found himself thrown headlong into an ocean of miracles. With such uncommonly superb workmanship of his myriad forms, did Narayana, Krishna, wrap Arjuna in that omnipresent vision. Hence the Lord became one and all. And what he sees next is what we're going to find out in the next class, which will be a few weeks from now, actually. I'm traveling next couple of weekends, so it'll be the third weekend from now. So because I'm going to be gone for the next 2 weekends, I have to make up for it in this weekend. So today, this class is for this weekend. Tomorrow's meditation is for next weekend, and Sunday's puja is for the following weekend. So we've trying to make it up to everybody by having lots of events this weekend. Namaskar. If anybody has any questions, we have a few minutes left, or we can just meditate together also. Okay, let's meditate then. First we'll say a closing prayer, and because this is the official concluding time, those who have to go are welcome to go, but we'll say a prayer first. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Om Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu Om Shanti 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 Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Namaskar. So those who have time, please join us for a brief meditation. Let us try to assimilate the teachings that Lord Krishna has given us. Close your eyes, keep your spine and neck straight, while remaining in a relaxed sitting posture. Take a few long, deep breaths and feel your body and mind relaxing further and further with each long inhalation and exhalation. Try to feel Amma's spiritual presence all around you, enveloping you, permeating within you. Now focus your awareness on the rhythmic flow of your breathing process. Make the breath long and deep while still breathing naturally. The more we observe the breath and focus on it, the more subtle the mind becomes. And we begin to feel the subtle flow of life energy being carried in and out by the breath. Continue to focus on the rhythmic flow of your breath, but now feeling that divine energy that is flowing through the breath, invigorating and enlivening every cell in your body. Try to perceive it as a manifestation of divine energy, the divine power pervading this world. Trying to feel it as Amma's divine energy that is permeating each and every cell, purifying it and nourishing the entire body with each breath. Now let us pray to our beloved Amma, seeking her divine guidance and grace. O my beloved Mother, O my Amma, just like you see your own divine self reflected in all of us, please help me to see that same divinity everywhere. I know, Amma, that it is my vasanas and my negativities that keep me from seeing that. But they are so deeply ingrained, they're so hard to remove, Amma. I need strength. Please give me the strength to remove those, to uproot those negativities. How many lifetimes you've been helping me, Amma, I know not. But please continue to hold my hand and guide me. Give me the confidence and faith that I will eventually reach the goal. And please don't let go of my hand until I merge in you and see your divine essence everywhere. We'll close with one last prayer. Take a deep breath. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnaad Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. One more long deep breath. And as you exhale, you can slowly open your eyes. Vishwaya, and see everybody tomorrow. Hopefully we spend the whole day together tomorrow.